Thank you for coming to this session in the afternoon after lunch. I hope that we will be able to keep you awake for the next 1 hour and a half, because normally it's difficult after you have a very nice Turkish lunch, I hope. My name is Ivan Pineda. I am the Director of Public Affairs for the European Wind Energy Association, based in Brussels, and I am very honored to be the chair for this interesting session regarding wind business opportunities in other continents. Very well focused on not only the Turkish market. I think it is extremely important for the local actors and for the international actors to know more about what is happening in other regions of the world. So I am very happy to chair a very distinguished panel today with us, Mr. Andrei Konechevko, who is the chairman of the board of the Ukrainian Wind Energy Association and director of the Ukrainian Wind Energy Agency. He has more than 22 years experience within the renewable energy sector in Ukraine. Next to him, Mr. Yoshinori Ueda, who is the Bureau Director Communication from the Japanese Wind Power Association and leader of GWEC Committee, an international committee and director in the Japan Wind Energy Association. And last but not least, Mr. Davide Astiaso Garcia, who is working for the Italian Wind Energy Association as a Secretary General since last year, but he is a research fellow and adjunct professor for the University of Sapienza in Rome, the Department of Electrical and Energy Engineering. The three of our panelists will give you an overview about what is happening in their respective markets. The session will be based on presentations. You will have around 15 minutes presentation for each of the panelists, where they will give you an overview on each of their markets. And then it will be followed by questions from myself and from the audience. So please, if you have any questions, write them down, that there will be a good time for discussion. So I will open the floor after each of the presentations are finished, so you have a couple of questions there. And then finally, probably we will wrap up with a brief discussion about how do they see the development of wind energy ahead in their respective countries. So without further delay, I would like to ask Mr. Konechevko from the Ukrainian Wind Energy Association to come to the podium and present to us the presentation, Ukraine Wind Energy Market after the adoption of the Green Tariff. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pineda. Dear ladies and gentlemen, all of you know about the current situation in Ukraine caused by the Russian annexation of the Crimea and ongoing military operation in the east of the country. The process of democratization has not been easy in Ukraine, but Ukraine has changed forever and become the EU-oriented state. One of the main economic problem existing in Ukraine, independence of the imported fossil fuel, mainly from Russia. For sure, diversification of its energy carrier sources is obligatory for Ukraine to become independent from the Russian gas. Renewable energy must play a key role in addressing this issue. Ukraine has already made real steps to promote local energy resource solution. The current law on feed-in tariff has allowed it establishing a national wind energy sector solely through the private investments, and all results. Ukraine has taken the first place in wind energy development among the former Soviet Union countries. The annexation of the Crimea by the Russian Federation and ongoing military operation in the east of the country have negatively affected the whole renewable energy industry in Ukraine. The slowdown appeared primarily due to reduced growth of the solar and wind sector, which successfully developed in the period of from 2011 to the first quarter of the 2014 in the above mentioned regions. Today, I'll present the Ukrainian wind energy market, its possible and challenges. I'd like to start my presentation with introduction Ukrainian Wind Energy Association, the chairman of the board of which I have an honor to be. Ukrainian Wind Energy Association was officially registered in summer 2008, a year before the Green Tariff Law was introduced in Ukraine. The Ukrainian Wind Energy Association is all Ukrainian professional organization aimed at promoting wind energy technologies and ensuring wind energy industry's interests at the national and international levels. The OVA members include developers and manufacturers of wind equipment active in Ukraine and other companies involved in implementing wind projects. Different studies and researches of the national wind market have been conducted by the OVA. Thus, in 2013, the experts of our association prepared the report of implementation phase of project for construction of wind power generation facilities. The document incorporates a phase process for implementing a wind project in Ukraine based on the legal framework regulating the Ukrainian wind industry. Ukrainian experts are currently participating in the development of similar handbook for the Republic of Kazakhstan. Cumulative installed wind capacity came to about 514 megawatt by the end of March 2015, out of which 426.3 megawatt are installed and grid connected in mainland Ukraine and 87.7 megawatt in the Crimea. In 2014, the wind sector of mainland Ukraine generated about 1,124,000,000 kilowatt hour of electricity. Due to the annexation of Crimea by Russia, the ongoing conflict in the East Ukrainian economic distress, the OVA has to cut its forecast for cumulative wind installation in 2015 almost in half from initially expected 900 till 1,000 megawatt to 550 megawatt. Speaking about the former Soviet Union countries, we can identify only 4 countries where wind energy development has begun: Ukraine, Russia, Azerbaijan, and Kazakhstan. The table shows the estimated wind potential and installed capacity at the end of 2014 in these countries. I'd like to note the green tariff system have been already introduced in Ukraine and last year in Kazakhstan and under development in Azerbaijan. Experts assume that the wind potential of Ukraine can be considered as high. The latest, still very conservative estimation suggests that the countrywide potential equals to 16,000 megawatt by 2030. This figure presents technically achievable potential. On 1st October 2014, the National Renewable Energy Action Plan for the period up to 2020 was adopted in Ukraine. The National Active Plan envisages the share of energy produced from renewable energy sources, including large hydropower station, should amount to at least 11% of the total energy consumption. The adoption of the National Action Plan opened broad perspectives for the development of wind energy sector in Ukraine. In practice, the share of wind energy in electricity production for renewable energy source should reach 26.5% by 2020. Experts from the Ukrainian Wind Energy Association were actively involved in the development of the National Plan for Renewable Energy. The success of the Ukrainian wind industry can be explained primarily by the adoption of legislation of green tariff in the country. On the 1st of April 2009, the Parliament of Ukraine passed a law setting up a feed-in tariff scheme for renewable energy producers. Another law aimed at stimulation of electricity generation from renewable energy source was adopted in November 2012. They enacted tariff rates and differentiated according to the sources of energy production and are linked to currency exchange rate. The feed-in tariff scheme until January 2030. According to Ukrainian legislation, the state guarantees purchase of all electricity produced by wind farm under green tariff. Green tariff rates for electricity generated and wind power plants being commissioned after 2014, 2020 and 2024 are decreased by 10, 20 and 30% respectively. For example, for a wind turbine with unit capacity higher than 2 MW and begin commissioned in 2015, green tariff rate amount to 10.18 euro cent. Sorry. Why not working? Some problem with book. Oh. Yes. Okay. Early February 2015, a draft law developed by several professional renewable energy associations, including the Ukrainian Wind Energy Association, was registered in the Parliament of Ukraine. This draft law and envisages some critical amendments to the existing Ukrainian legislation of renewable energy industry. In particular, it provides for the abolition of the local content requirement and the introduction of the premium in the amount from 5 to 15% to the green tariff for electricity producers from renewable energy sources which use power equipment of Ukrainian manufacturers. This is like in Turkish. Total installed capacity of the power plant in Ukraine amounted to 54.7 gigawatt by the end of 2014. Out of which renewable energy power plants accounted for 2%. The share of wind power plants reached 0.9%. It's planning to increase cumulative capacity of power plant using renewable energy sources over the next 10 years. The share of green electricity in the structure of electricity cost in Ukraine in 2014 accounted for 6.6%, out of which wind power accounted for 2.22%. The slide shows installed wind capacity in Ukraine by regions and per years. Wind power capacities added their private investments are marked with yellow columns. Blue columns show wind capacities that were installed under the state complex program for wind farm construction in the period of 1997 till 2010 and financed from the state budget. Since 2011, nearly all new wind capacities in Ukraine have been put online with private investments. About 750 million euros have been invested in the wind power sector in Ukraine. In September 2012, Forlander Wind Technology Ukraine inaugurated the plant for production of wind turbines with unit capacity of 2.5 megawatt in Kramatorsk, Donetsk region. In 2013, the company acquired a license from the German company Wetzweier for the production of wind turbines to 2.5 and 3 megawatt. As of today, the production of 100-meter towers, nacelles frame, and wind turbines housing components has been already mastered. In mid-December 2013, the Ukrainian company Nikolaev Shipyard Ocean, in cooperation with Danish company Vestas, implemented a joint pilot project to overload components and assemble units for wind generation V112 with unit capacity of 3 megawatt. This is a diagram of wind turbine models installed in Ukraine. By the end of 2010, and the state complex program for wind farm construction, wind capacities in Ukraine were represented by 100 kilowatt wind turbines USV by American license and 600 kilowatt turbines Belgique, most of which were installed in the Crimea. For the last 4 years, all the new wind capacity additions have been represented by wind turbines with unit capacity of 2.5 and 3 megawatt by Forlander Wind Technology and Vestas. On October 24, 2013, the Parliament of Ukraine adopted a law on functioning of electricity market in Ukraine, which establishes a new model of electricity market based on competitive principles. Thus, the law envisages implementing of the electrical market of Ukraine direct contract, a day-ahead market, and a balancing market. The law came in force on the 1st of January 2014, and a new market to begin its work till July 2017. Summarizing the above set for your attention is a table demonstrating opportunities and challenges the wind developers are facing with in Ukraine. The following components can be attributed to be advantages of the market: large territories suitable for a wind development, good wind potential in the most region, attractive green tariff scheme active in the country. The further successful wind development in Ukraine depends on the green conditions. The existing electricity transmission infrastructure in Ukraine requires substantial upgrading, and the connection of high-capacity generation facilities to grid may be a challenge in certain regions of Ukraine. In case a grid connection agreement is concluded after July 2014, for obtaining a green tariff, a new wind farm has to pass on obligatory review of compliance with a 10 years development plan of the United Energy System of Ukraine. As of the date of my today presentation, the draft plan has been developed and is currently under approval on the relevant state bodies. Such a long delay in adoption development plan creates certain level of uncertainty in the market. Since August 2014, the renewable energy market of Ukraine has been facing with some legislative hurdles caused by the decision made by Ukrainian electricity market regulator. Unfortunately, depends of the regulator on the Ministry of Energy and Coal Industry of Ukraine has become more and more apparent. More detailed information of wind energy sector of Ukraine is available in the report Wind Energy in Ukraine, annually prepared by our association. Thank you very much for attention. Hope for future cooperation.
At this point in time, I would like to ask anyone from the audience if do you have any questions for our Ukrainian representative? Well, in this case, if nobody has any questions, I have one. It was mentioned related to the green tariff. the levels of the green tariff that were adopted in 2009, but it was not mentioned that in 2015 the national authorities reduced the green tariff by almost half of the current levels. Could you please tell us what would be the consequence of this?
This is the action of a regulator aimed at reducing feed-in tariff are harmful for the development of renewable power and Ukraine's energy independence. Now this is a real big problem to the invest climate to the in Ukraine. Moreover, I could lead to bankruptcy of wind companies that have taken loans, problem with banks' failure to comply with its obligations taken by Ukraine before the energy community and within the association agreement with the EU. The UVA calls for the European wind market support in addressing this issue.
Okay. Is there any question from the audience again? In that case, then, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for Mr. Konachevko. And then I will ask Mr. Ueda, Yoshinori Ueda, President from the Japan Wind Power Association, to introduce your presentation, Wind Power Business in Japan.
Sorry for trouble. So thank you for introducing me. So let's start introducing wind power business in Japan. So wind power is very useful to secure the energy security for each nation. So Japan, we do not have the national resources, especially for the energy resources. So we import about 94% of energy resources from abroad. Most of them come from the Middle East area. So we spend $26 billion for buying fuels from Middle East now. So this situation is the same in 2013 and 2014. So if we introduce a large amount of wind power to Japan, we can save these monies. And also we can secure our energy securities. So in past days, we rely on mainly to the nuclear power to secure energy security in Japan. But 3 years before, the big tragedy attacked Japan. So big earthquake and tsunami attacked the nuclear power plant. So 3 nuclear power plants made a meltdown at Fukushima. So most of Japanese citizens now dislike nuclear power now. So the public opinion changed dramatically from accepting nuclear to anti-nuclear and pro-renewables now. So we cannot rely on nuclear power no more. Ouch. So on the other hand, Japan has plenty of wind energy resources. So this is a research result by Japanese Ministry of Environment. So we have an onshore potential about 210 gigawatt, and offshore potential, including floating offshore, is 456 gigawatt. The total is 666 gigawatt. It's enough to support Japanese electricities. So Japanese government introduced a very attractive feed-in tariff for renewable energies in 2012. The tariff price are seen this chart. So the tariff are re-estimated every year based on the latest market prices. And also the tariff are qualified just before grid connection approvals. So it is a little, it brings a little difficulties for the wind power development because we need 4 years environment impact assessment process for developing wind farm in Japan now. So we can get this feed-in tariff approval only almost completing this process. So we have to focus about 4 years future now. On the other hand, solar power is environment impact assessment free now. So 22 Japanese yen per kilowatt hour. This is about 0.48 Turkish lira per kilowatt hour or 0.17 euro per kilowatt hour. It is very attractive. But unfortunately, so the feed-in tariff for solar power were more attractive for investors than wind power in Japan. So at the first time, the feed-in tariff for solar power was 40 Japanese yen per kilowatt hour. So it is 0.87 Turkish lira per kilowatt hour or 0.31 euro per kilowatt hours. So I think they are the world highest price. So most investors prefer solar power than wind powers. So this makes solar power some kind of boom or bust in Japan. So in 2013 and in 2014, the mass introduction of solar power occurred in Japan. So the accumulated solar power becomes about 18 gigawatt at the end of March 2015. And the latest fiscal year, the 8.55 gigawatt new solar power introduced in Japan. And more, there are 68 gigawatt of solar powers get the right of feed-in tariff of 40 Japanese yen or 36 Japanese yen now. So the 27 gigawatt of them are requested only in February and March in 2014. So before the price is going down to 32 Japanese yen. On the other hand, the wind power in Japan is still keep low level now. So it is only 250 megawatts per year in last fiscal year. Fiscal year means from April to March in Japan now. So this is about 140 of solar power industry in Japan. And also it is 1/4 of Turkish annual installation last year. The total installation in Japan is nearly 3 gigawatt. It is about 80% of Turkish accumulated installation, 3.8 gigawatt. The obstacles against wind power in Japan are those. The root problem is the inconsistency of Japanese government. So some people still want nuclear powers, and other people love solar power than wind power now. And the short-term obstacle is the cumbersome environment impact assessment procedures. So it is applied all wind farm over 10 megawatt since October 2012, just 3 months later of the introduction of the attractive feed-in tariffs. So it needs 4 years. It means the big burst of wind power introduction in Japan occurs after 2016. So Japanese government admits this mistake, and start to improving this problem now. So in future, it will be some kind of turn to good. So now 88 projects of 5.2 gigawatt in the environmental impact assessment process now. So most of them are located in northern rural areas of Japan named Hokkaido and Tohoku. And midterm problem is grid restrictions. So Japanese grid lines are dominated by the old-fashioned electric power companies. So Japan is dominated by the 9 regional electric companies, just like 1980s in Europe. So they dislike to send electricity each other. So it narrows wind power introduction in Japan in past days. So Japanese government intends to achieve unbundling Japanese electric powers. So this is called electric power reform, electric power system reform. So they start to do it. So JRPA asked Japanese government to improve these situations. So the first one is inter-regional grid operation for wind power aggregations. And the second one is build a new local grid lines at northern rural area in Hokkaido and Tohoku. And third one is enlarge the inter-regional grid line between Hokkaido and Aomori. And the fourth one is improve the sophisticated wind power output prediction systems. And we also need power storage systems and demand side management systems and retrofit fossil power plants. So now. So this is a map of Japan. So Japan is divided into 9 regions, and each region is dominated by only one electric company. So they dislike to send electricity each other in past days. But Japanese government made a new organization who operate Japanese grid line totally. This is named Organization for Cross-Regional Coordination of Transmission Operators. So this new organization start work from just this April. So from now, the situation will change. Sorry, they are written in kanji characters. This is a domestic news, so it is very difficult to find out the English news. And the Japanese government start investing for the new grid lines for wind powers. So this is a map for the Hokkaido, and that was the map for the Tohoku. So we are now starting to build a new grid lines. So if we build a grid line at northern part of Hokkaido, maybe 3 additional gigawatt is available. And then we stretch a grid line in Tohoku, Akita, and Aomori. Additional 300 megawatt is available. So this construction is already started. So they will be realized within 5–10 years. And also, Japanese NEDO, New Energy Development Organization, started to develop sophisticated wind power output prediction system in 2014. So it is a 5 years project. So before 2020, we can use this new system for modifying the fluctuation of wind power and the actual electricity demand. Just like Spain and German doing. But Japanese electric companies still resist this moving now. So this is a news from Recharge's Insight. So reforms face formidable resistance from old-fashioned utilities. So we have to fight against them. So Japan Wind Power Association requests Japanese government to set a huge target for the wind power. So we think wind power shall supply 20% of Japanese electricity by 2050. So our target is 75 gigawatt by 2050 and 36 gigawatt by 2030 and 11 gigawatt by 2020. The 11 gigawatt is a small target, but it needs time to change the situation. So that is why we admit this small target for 2020. So this target consists from 3 regions. The first one is onshore, and the second one is fixed offshore, and the third one is floating offshore. So Japan has world's 6th or 7th largest exclusive economic zone. So therefore, offshore wind power has a large potential. So we want to use it. I introduced Japanese wind turbine industries as those. There are 3 large wind turbine manufacturers in Japan. The first one is Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, and the second one is Hitachi, formerly Fuji Heavy Industries, and the third one is Japan Steel Works. So each manufacturer producing their own wind turbines. And also, there are many wind power associated companies in Japan, the bearing companies and the generator companies, and the carbon fiber companies. So we gathered the industrial statistics from 5 years before. So this is a sample of fiscal year 2012. So there are 68 companies doing the business in Japan, and there are 76 factories, and about 3,300 people are working for wind turbine industries. And the sales amount is about 13 billion Japanese yen. It is almost 1 billion euros or 3 billion Turkish liras. And the total domestic production is, in 2009, it was about 250 billion Japanese yen, but unfortunately, it decreased from 2009 to 2012 from 251 billion Japanese yen to 104 billion Japanese yen. This is caused by the patent fight between Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and GEs. So Mitsubishi lost the position, so the sales go down. And also, as a foreign company starts investing to Japan now, so Patan, the developer, bought the GPIs in January, and Bain, another developer, bought the Japan Wind Power Development. This company is the 3rd largest developer in Japan. The last item I introduced is offshore wind power projects in Japan. So there are lots of offshore wind power projects in Japan now. So 5 offshore wind in Japan. So Japan has a very high population, so it is very difficult to build a wind turbine on land. So, and we have an island nation, so we have a large, 6th largest EEZ. So we want to develop the offshore wind. So this is a Kamisu offshore wind farm. It is very famous for withstand the large earthquake and large tsunami. And this is a demonstration project at Choshi near Tokyo. And this is a 2.4 megawatt machine, Mitsubishi 2.4 megawatt machines. And this is a 2 megawatt demonstration machine installed in Kyushu. This is produced by the J-Power, and the wind turbine is made by Japan Steel Works. And this is a floating type. It is installed in Nagasaki Prefecture, Kabashima. So 2 megawatt downwind type wind turbines. This is made by Hitachi Corporation. And the last project is the Fukushima Recovery Project. So this is consisted from 3 floating wind turbines and 1 floating substations. So in 2013, 1 2 megawatt machine floating wind turbine installed. This machine is also made by Hitachi. And in 2015, this summer, the 7 megawatt machine will be installed. So this is made by Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. And the last third one shall be installed next year. The conclusions. So Japan was not so eager to wind power development in past days because there are many hurdles and obstacles against wind power development in Japan. So such as severe environment impact assessment or grid restrictions and construction act or typhoons, earthquakes, and many other things. But Japan has changed to pro-wind action after Fukushima accident. So offshore wind power is one of the key technologies. So we are trying to remove these hurdles, obstacles now. So, but it needs a couple of years to realize. So please expect future wind power development in Japan. So if you want to get more information, please check our website. We have an English website, so please research it. So the last one, we are the Japan Wind Power Association. So we are representing the wind power industry in Japan. So we are founded in 2001, and we have 26 full members. And we have about 85% of wind power installation in Japan now. Thank you.
At this moment, could I ask anyone from the audience if you have any questions for Mr. Ueda? No questions? Maybe one from my side. You mentioned the huge potential for offshore wind in Japan. And it is not a secret that Japan has the highest feed-in tariff in the world for offshore wind.
Yeah.
So what is, in your last slide, what is that is constraining at the moment that huge development, having such a great incentive?
This is just an emerging stage. So, so right now, if the feed-in tariff for offshore is lower than the solar power, no one will invest for the offshore power. So as a first year or second year, we need a high feed-in tariff. But in future, maybe 5 years or 10 years later, the feed-in tariff shall become more smaller than the large solars.
Thank you very much. Any question from the audience? We have one question here, gentlemen, please.
Hello, my name is Furkan. I'm MSc Sustainable Energy Master Student in Brunel University, London. My question is going to be about environmental impact assessment about solar PV plants. As you mentioned, there's no environmental impact assessment for solar plants.
Yes.
Yeah? I mean, since the manufacturing solar panels itself emitting greenhouse gases to atmosphere and some chemicals are being involved in the manufacturing process, how can they be exempt from the impact assessment? I'd like to ask this. Thank you.
So the environmental impact assessment is for the development of the land, so not for the manufacturing process. So in Japan, the solar power began from the household. It's a small size. So that is why Japanese government did not apply environmental impact assessment for the solar power. Unfortunately, wind power was very huge. So it brings some kind of opposition power. So they request Japanese environment, the Japanese Ministry of Environment to settle some kind of assessment for wind power.
Thank you. Any other question for Mr. Ueda? Okay, thank you very much. Then I will invite our next presenter, please, Mr. Davide from the Italian Wind Energy Association. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everybody. I'm going to briefly present the situation on the Italian wind energy power. What is the scenarios from the future years? And we have recently, our associations, our national association has recently realized a report thanks to the help and with the effort of a consulting firm called Elements that we asked them, it's an Italian consulting firm that realized that study that I'm going to briefly present. So the main objectives was to confront the costs and the benefit of wind energy in Italy from here to the next following years, considering mainly an economical approach. So the first point is to analyze what were the situation before now in the last 10 years, more or less. As you can see, we have an important and constant growth of wind power in Italy since 2006, 2007 until 2012. And where in that year we get the more than 8,000 megawatt installed in Italy. And after these years, we have the last 2 or 3 years where the installation were increased too much. That was because the Italian rules changed, and as you can see, we have around 400 megawatt installed in 2013, while in 2012 we had 1,200, more than 1,200 megawatts. And the last year, in 2014, we had only a little more than 100 megawatt installed. So the situation changed in this way. In any case, we have to realize the National Action Plan, the Italian National Action Plan that foresee for 2020 a wind energy power of about 12,000 megawatt. So we have to calm this gap from the actual megawatt until the one foreseen for 2020. Another aspect is the one concerning the last actions, because as I told before, the Italian rules foresee some action registers, actions from wind power above 5 megawatt and registers for wind plants under 5 megawatts. And then we have direct access for plants above 60, under 60 kilowatt. In any case, considering the actions of the plants for more of 5 megawatts, we can see that in the last 3 actions, 2012, 2013, and 2014, the Italian government total assigned more than 1,100 megawatt. But after 2 or 3 years, we can see that only less than 200 megawatt were realized in Italy. Then we have another 150 megawatt in construction. But we know that more than 800 megawatts are not in construction, neither built. This was a point that we are discussing with the Italian government for obtaining, for modifying some rules about the next actions in order to obtain that the new ones, if we have new ones, we can easily obtain, we can easily build that the assigned megawatt. This is a more focused graph about the first 2 auctions. As you can see, the winners were mainly developers. This was one of the causes that port to this situation. As you can see, the medium and big renewable energy source producers, they have less than the half of the total amount. Starting from these points, we can foresee a scenario, two kinds of scenarios from the following years, starting from now until 2035. We considered two kinds of scenarios. The low one was if only a part of the action winners will get the incentives, will build concretely the wind power plants. And the high scenario is if all the action winners will get the incentives. As you can see, we have a reductions in million euros of the cost from the Italian government of wind plants. And the main drivers for this reduction is the end of incentives coming from green certificate plants. There are the old situation of incentives. So we have many plants that they are exit in the following years from the incentives. So we have some money to put to auctions and registers and to direct actions. That was the situation about the cost. Let's look at the benefits. We have considered mainly three kinds of benefits. The reduction of the energy national single price coming from wind power. And then we consider also the tax revenue, because in Italy, not only in Italy, the wind power plants will give some money to the national government and local. And then we consider as the third point, local benefits mainly to municipalities which receives in Italy huge amounts of local royalties. And in this cost, in this study, we are not taking into account other benefits, direct or indirect, or other health and environmental benefits about occupationals and reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Considering tax revenue, this is the graphic that where we can see the amount of million euros that the wind power give to the Italian in taxes in the previous years. And this is a scenario for the following years. We can see that we have a reduction also in that case for the phasing out of plants with green certificates. Then we have local royalties to the local municipalities where the plants will be installed. As for the tax revenue, you can see the date, the previous date, and the coming date for the following years, split in low and high scenarios. The last benefits come from the national single price, reductions of the national single price due to wind energy. We simulated an hourly average of the national single price in the world 2013, obtaining that we found a total annual saving of 750 million euro coming from a decrease of the national single price of the energy coming from wind installations and wind energy plants. We can use the same approach for calculating what happened to the national single price in the following years. So the results is that we can estimate a benefit of between 30 billion euro in the low scenarios and 15 billion euros in the high scenarios, coming from this reduction of national single price. So, comparing cost versus benefits of the historical data from 2002 until 2013, we can see that we have a little more of 5 billion euros coming from the total support scheme costs. And then we have 0.7 billion euros coming from the benefits from the national single price reductions and then other 0.8 billion euros coming from tax renewal, and then 0.3 billions coming from royalties. So the net cost, it was not 5.1 billions, but 3.2 billion euros. This is for the previous years. So let's look at the following years that are the more interesting data we have. This is a graphic where we can compare the costs coming from support scheme in the following years, and then the benefits coming from tax renewable, royalties, and NSP reduction. As you can see, we have a decrease of support scheme for the following years coming from the phasing out of the green certificates plans, and then we have an increase of the benefits. So, as you can see, we have from 2023, we have a benefit of 70 million euros coming from wind energy source. This is without any other actions. Then we can see what happened with new actions and new power installed. This is the same slide, but in the high scenario, if you can see, only some numbers changes, but more or less the trend is the same that the one we have seen for the low scenario. So, the balance from the perspective of the following years, we can see that we have a positive balance. So the benefits, the net benefits at the end, should be between more or less 3 and 4 billion euros. So we have a positive trend for the wind power in Italy in the following years, because the benefits are higher than the total support scheme for the following years. So the our questions, like the Italian association, but the question that many operators have now in Italy is if it could be possible to have new auctions. So we simulate 5 new auctions for the following 5 years with the following assumptions. 1 auction a year, starting from this summer, 500 megawatt for each auction, and then we also simulate the base price. 1 price for the first 3 auctions of 15 euros for megawatt per hours, and 1 price for the last 2 of, 150 for the first 2 auctions and 110 for the last 2. So the aim, the objectives was to, as I said at the beginning of my presentation, is to arrive at this 12,000 megawatt in Italy for 2020. So in that case, we can see that with the low scenario, we will not reach, in any case, that wind power, because we arrive at more or less 10,000 megawatt in 2020. So we have 1,800 megawatt or 2,400 megawatt, including offshore, to get the 2020 targets. This is a foreseen graph for the wind energy cost with new actions. This is the low scenarios. As you can see, the cost for the new schemes, for the new scenario, the evaluated ones, are very lower compared with the old schemes of green certificates. So it will be possible to get this money from new actions. This is the same for considering the high scenarios. And in the high scenario, if all the winners will realize the plans, we have the total cost of new actions from 2017 will be on 1.8 billion euros. So let's compare the cost with the benefits, with the saving from green certificating phasing out. As you can see, it's 2 different orders. The cost of new actions are very lower that the one, it represents between the 6 and the 21% of the saving for green certificates. We have a major cost in 2022 that is 83 million euros. In the high scenario, the range of the cost represents between 12 and 38 of the saving from green certificate phasing out. So also in that case, the scenario is feasible. Finally, let's have a look to the cost versus benefits considering new actions. As you can see in the graph, the total annual level benefits will be immediately higher than costs. Starting from 2017, we have a positive trend of 4 million euro, then it's always increasing in the years. And for 2021, the incentives cost will be constantly decreased, as you can see here in the graphs, while we have the benefits will grow. The NSP reduction will constantly increase for obtaining more funds and more money for wind power. This is the high scenarios. More or less, as you can see, the ranges, the trends are the same ones. So finally, comparing cost versus benefits, we can see that also including new action, we have a positive trend, we have a net benefit of a range. It depends, of course, it is a simulation, so we cannot give precise numbers. We can give a range of numbers, so we have 1.8 million, from 1.8 million euro to 1,000 euros, sorry, for until 4,500 million euros coming from wind power in Italy. So the answer is yes, we have the possibility, and we are working for this, for obtaining new actions, new wind power installed in Italy in the following years. What are the next steps? We have an important meeting in Rome in the Global Wind Energy Day, the 12th of June of this year, where we are inviting, we are all the politicians and decision makers that deals with energy source and renewable energy, of course. They will participate, and we are working with them for obtaining this kind of results. And we have also an important conferences and not also conferences, but a main exhibition in Italy is the main exhibition in Italian wind energy source that is in Rimini in the beginning of November of this year. We have all the main actors of wind energy, national and international actors there, and of course we have also there some conferences with the ministries and with all the local and national stakeholders. So I hope to meet you again in these situations. That's all for me. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Davide. Is there any questions from the audience at this moment? Are there any questions? So maybe one on our side. It's been mentioned the potential and the benefits and costs for wind energy in Italy. An important aspect also are the benefits that could bring regionally, not only for the country. Given the low interconnection capacity that Italy has, how do you see that the European countries can attract more investment for infrastructure to increase the interconnection in Italy?
Yeah, the grid energy connection in Italy is changing very quickly because in the last maybe 6 years, the whole energy sector changed rapidly. So the main Italian operators on grid connection, that is called Terna, was trying and is still trying to increase and to realize some also smart grids for stay in time with this increase of renewable energy. But nowadays we have the 5% of international grid connections with the rest of Europe. But our target and the European Commission target is to get the 10%. So we have to double that value. So I think there is still a gap that we have to realize in the following years. So we have to, I think it's a good chance also for grid connectors to invest in Italy for obtaining these numbers that we are aimed with.
Okay, thank you very much. Any question? Okay, thank you. So then I will invite Mr. Davide to come to the panel, and maybe we can have some more minutes for discussion amongst ourselves. I want to start with both Ukraine and Japan. Both of you are very much dependent from fossil fuels, so you share that characteristic in your market. You mentioned Japan in your presentation, 94% dependency, and Ukraine is the same case. So what, in your view, what can be done to increase significantly the share of wind energy in your countries? And what would you recommend to policymakers to increase this market? Who would like to start with that question? Mr. Ueda?
So it is a difficult question. So because the Japanese government did not decide their attitude now, but at the end of this year, in December, the COP21 will be held in Paris. So to prepare for this COP21, so Japanese government have to settle the target for the CO2 reduction. Also have to decide the combination on the electricity power resources. So we hope to share more than 50% by renewables, but Japanese government think it's too far. So they intend to settle about 30% for renewables now. So the 30% involves about 9% of large hydros. So new renewable energy, solar and wind power and biomass and geothermal should have the 21% share in future, in 2030. So the next problem is the competition between the solar powers. So solar powers have the already secured the right of 68 gigawatt. So it's ridiculous figures. So because we can install only 7 or 8 gigawatt per year, so 68 gigawatt means it needs 10 years to continue. But they secured 40 or 36 Japanese yen per kilowatt hour for this 68 gigawatt. But 10 years later, the price of the solar plant getting much more cheaper than now. So it's a cheating. So Japanese government intend to force abandon the right for the solar powers because they should not start the construction within a couple of years. Then the 68 gigawatts will become 20 gigawatt or 30 gigawatt. So the wind power can get a much more share than now. So it depends on the competition between nuclear power and the solar power now. So we have to defeat them. And in this point, the cost is very important. So we want to expand the offshore wind power, but 36 Japanese yen is too expensive, as you mentioned. So we have to offer more attractive, lower price for Japanese government now.
Andrei?
It's very short. First of all, this is Ukrainian depend from fossil fuel from Russia, from another countries, and now we have some proposals from change political. Now we buying nuclear fuel from Russia and proposed from USA. We can change political situation. We need buy nuclear fuel from USA. It's not normal. In Ukraine now we have some oldest heat power plant, we have oldest nuclear power plant, and we need start change all energy sector, and we need think about economy process. Today we have some example. For example, UK have signature with France about 2 new nuclear block, and France guarantee around 12.5 euro cent per kilowatt hour electricity production. We now and we see this situation in European Union, in, for example, in Germany. This is wind power, twice cheaper or new nuclear blocks. And our position, our association and another association in Ukraine will start discuss about economical new energy sector. And in Ukraine we have big potential for wind, solar, biomass, and now we have more discuss about connection to the Ministry of Economy together with Ministry of Agriculture sector, because it's real, it's not future, it's now this will be fast development, this technology. And now we have it's big supporting from our Ukrainian parliament. Only we have another side from our new government. And I think now this is we like to more publishing action for population, and we need this is more said about story about another countries when development renewable energy, and renewable energy it's a real future, and Ukraine is a good example because we have more big potential to the development renewable energy and reduce CO2. Thank you.
So it's very interesting seeing that the solution for getting away from fossil fuels is nuclear, as if Ukraine doesn't have a historical memory of what happened in Chernobyl some years ago. But let me come back to the support that the US has been giving to Ukraine, because I understand that there's been huge support from the European and from the US. And recently the European Bank of Reconstruction made a very clear disappointing note regarding the feed-in tariff that has been retroactively changed. I understand that there is a major investment from the EBRD in Ukraine. Could you please give us what is your view on these investments that are happening in Ukraine and that are not being able to be served?
Today, EBRD support only renewable energy, and we have this is now some project support from EBRD, 2 wind farms, some solar project, some biomass project. We have special program yourself supporting renewable energy, and all time from EBRD we hearing about we like support or renewable energy, any nuclear, any fossil fuel, only supporting some reconstruction energy network. And without development renewable energy, our invest climate will be stopped.
Thank you. Let me then go back to the similarities now, but between Japan and Italy. We have seen that also the grid connection, the grid integration is a very big challenge. I know from anecdote that in Italy, the system operator Terna is installing a big deal of batteries for coping up with the variability of wind, because apparently it's cheaper and faster to build a bank of capacitors and a bank of batteries than actually building grids. In the case of Japan, 9 system operators are fighting between each other in order to have a regional coordination. Davide, I don't know if you can give us your point of view related to how important is grid development for the success of wind power in Italy, and then Mr. Ueda for Japan.
Yeah, in Italy, the next studies that Terna are making is also about accumulators, something for optimize the wind energy production coming from all the renewable energy sources, because we have a very big production in the south of Italy coming from the wind plants mainly, and also coming from solar and photovoltaic plants. And then we have the more source of consumptions that are more mainly in the middle and in the north of Italy. So sometimes the grid, the Italian grid, is not able to collect all the energies from the south to the north. So this produces some expenses, of course, also for sometimes the energy plants, the wind plants or the photovoltaic plants have to be stopped their productions because the energy, the grid capacity is not so big. So it's one of the critical aspects for the Italian situation is that, and this was the reason why I told before that we are now working to increase, not only by using accumulators, but also to implement the energy, the national energy grid, also to simplify the bureaucracy for obtaining the connection to this grid for the new wind powers. And we are strictly working with Terna about that point.
Okay, in Japan, so it is okay for more, right now we have about 3 gigawatts of wind turbine in Japan now, and it's produced about 0.5% of Japanese electricity now. So 0.5% is enough low, it will not affect the Japanese grid lines. So maybe more 3-4 gigawatts is okay, or only change the mind of the electric companies. So the new organization of grid operator, if they work properly, the more 3-5 gigawatt will be okay. The next challenge is to when the new grid line for Hokkaido and Tohoku complete their jobs. So in Japan, it is very difficult to borrow land because there are many landowners in Japan now. So if we can do it quickly, like China or some Russia, so it's okay. But everything needs time in Japan. So it will be, I think, 5-10 years. It is necessary to build a new grid lines. Then the 3 gigawatt will be available in Hokkaido, and 300 or 500 megawatt will be available in Tohoku. And the next step is to grid connection between Hokkaido and main island. This is a large issue. So right now, about 600 megawatt grid line is available, and 300 megawatt will be added in near future. But 900 megawatt is not enough for the installing a gigawatt of wind power in Hokkaido. So we have to stretch it into several gigawatt in future. But the problem is who pays for the stretching this inter-Hokkaido and main island grid lines. So this is under discussion now. So if only the wind developer should pay for it, we will be bankrupt. So we want to share this cost to the entire electricity consumers. So if it be achieved, everything will change. So we are negotiating with the Japanese government now.
Thank you very much. Now, the title of the session is Win Business Opportunities in Other Countries. So to wrap up the session, I would like that each panelist tell us, people is interested in investing probably in some of your countries, so you will have a 2-minute speech, sales speech for convincing people to come to either Ukraine, Japan, or Italy. What would you say to them? What are the good things that these markets offer in terms of investment and in terms of opportunities for wind?
Deployment of wind energy will help towards existing policy goals of reducing the dependence of imported gas, and help towards diversification and securing the energy supply. For sure, they reduce the CO2 emissions.
So right now, the investors in Japan prefer solar. In past days, the price for solar is getting reduced. So in future, they will invest for the wind power.
We, as the Italian Energy Associations, presented the study I briefly introduced you to the Italian government, to the main stakeholders, and we present also a report highlighting all the criticalities that we had with the last actions, and we received until now positive feedback. So we are waiting for a new decree, maybe in the beginning of June, that will launch new actions. So there are new possibilities in Italy for the following years, and we only have to wait a couple of months for having the governmental approval of this.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think that if there is any other question from the audience, probably we can finish this session 4 minutes ahead of time. So please help me to give a applause to the panelists. Thank you very much.